Howdy, folks. Simon Moskowitz here, and I'm a correspondent for MSNBC CNN FOXCR newscasting station in Tampa, Florida. And I'd like to welcome you guys to The Real Zone. This is The Real Zone. This is where we get real with objective media news sources, and where we try to examine the biases inherent in pretty much every other news source.
Let's get real.
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 It was a cold night, 1989. It was a Burger King parking lot. And Troy Davis and a group of his friends beat up and pistol whipped a homeless man. However, this isn't the big part of the story. Supposedly, according to 7 witnesses, Troy Davis picked up the pistol that was used on the homeless man and shot Officer McFaley, an off-duty police officer, in the face. This shot killed him.
Pathos. A lot of pathos was used in the pictures that were depicted of Troy Davis. In fact, some of the pictures had him displayed with glasses, which showed him having like an appearance of intelligence rather than being a bloodthirsty killer. Also, there were a lot of pictures of the protesters that appeared as if they were joined together in a form of camaraderie among the community, which encourages the reader to join that group and fight the protest against capital punishment. The Troy Davis case was also depicted as a very corrupt case the way it was carried out. And so this also leaves the reader thinking that the judicial system itself is corrupt and that there should be actions taken against the Troy Davis case itself. Also, the McPhail family, the family who was killed, who had a member killed by Troy Davis, is dehumanized, as Mrs. McPhail, the officer's mother, states that it's a form of retribution, and Troy Davis deserved what he got. And now that they can put this case finally to rest, they are much happier. Someone like the McPhails, like Mrs. McPhail, stating her famous quote of, "He got what he deserved, and I'm glad I could put this case finally to rest." The other way the author gains credibility is by interviewing quote-unquote ordinary Americans and being at the scene of the protests while they're doing their news story. Like when one author interviews an American, they say that this is outrageous and that they can't possibly execute someone based on eyewitness testimonies. This example allows the reader to further connect with the author's article and as they think of themselves as an ordinary American.
Derek sees it.
Logos. The author uses a variety of methods, like numbers and the message, to portray the bias of logos. For example, many of the authors state that 7 out of the 9 witnesses recanted or changed their testimony. However, there is one author that just said several witnesses. This is a totally different message than using the exact number as 7 out of 9 witnesses, because several can range anywhere from 51% to 99%. Another way that the author uses the bias and the logos method is when he states that hundreds of thousands of people signed a petition to wanting to let Troy Davis go and not kill him. The real number is 250,000. Now when the reader reads hundreds of thousands, he has no idea, he or she has no idea the exact number. It could range from anywhere from 100,000 to infinity. The message-wise bias is when the author chooses quotes like siding towards Troy Davis not being guilty, like the fact that many people thought that the eyewitness testimony should not have been enough to kill the man. These variety of ways show that logos can be a bias.
Howdy, Simon Moskowitz here, and right now we'll be talking about types of media bias with the Troy Davis case. The most prevalent type of media bias was bias towards ease. This is also the most common that you'll see in pretty much any article. Really, this one's frustrating because everyone already knows the facts about the Troy Davis article, and frankly, when people keep reporting on them, they're just feeding the beast of the 24-hour news cycle. Also with the Troy Davis case is that it's been reported hundreds of times each day on thousands of different news sources in hundreds of different countries. And so, frankly, everyone knows the story, and it's really just oversaturated. Another type of media bias in this was sensationalism. Sensationalism is when facts are often embellished and turned more dramatic than they truly are. In one of the first videos, it opens up with one of the prosecutors saying how death penalties are hard all the time. It's really general to say that they're hard all the time. He also said how witnesses recant their statements all the time. This seems very general and quite sensational. Another common form of sensationalism was when multiple people were referring to Troy Davis' trial back to the Jim Crow days. They were saying how Troy Davis was similar to the Jim Crow era when black people were put on trial and they weren't given fair treatment. This, although it might have some merit, is somewhat sensational. And then the last example of this would be, at the courthouse. There are protesters outside, but reporters claim that people were protesting up to the very last minute, making it seem much more dramatic than it truly was, because in actuality, Troy Davis was denied clemency a couple hours before he was put to death. Thank you. The final form of media bias is racism. And this comes in many forms. In one of my articles, racism was an issue because of the lack of it. And really, in this day and age, there isn't too much racism, but the article failed to mention how Troy Davis was a black man in a stereotypically racist part of the country. And with this lack of racism, there is some inherent bias. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there were sites that had multiple black influential leaders quoted, such as Reverend Al Sharpton and P. Diddy, aka Sean Combs. He's a famous rapper. And they were saying how Troy Davis should be set free, and they were biased towards Troy Davis because of their race. Yeah. Rhetorical fallacies. Rhetorical fallacies are frequently cited in the Troy Davis articles on Fox News. One of the most common ones is ad hominem, which is an attack on the person, who's Troy Davis in this case. The title of many of the articles cited Troy Davis as cop killer. They would say, cop killer convicted of murder, or something along those lines. And they'd refer to him as a cop killer instead of Troy Davis. Similar in the Casey Anthony case, when Nancy Grace would refer to Casey Anthony as Top Mom. In addition, there are many hasty generalizations made by reporters. One reporter said that since 7 of the 9 witnesses recanted their statements, then it's absolutely not enough evidence for Troy Davis to be executed. This, however, might need to be looked into further before anything can really come of it. And then lastly, there's straw man and bandwagoning in the Troy Davis case. This happens because Troy Davis is built up to be a martyr in the cases. There are many shots when people are shown across the world protesting for Troy Davis, and also after his death, when people are hugging and crying and thanking Troy Davis because next time, maybe justice will be served. Troy Davis has served as a martyr for the cause, and thank you. I'm Simon Moskowitz.